gentlemen, welcome to the first Blue Stool of the academic year 2015-2016. Blue Stool number 24, Dr. Eric Ronis. What's so liberal about a liberal education?
So the question that was on my mind and is on my mind is what makes a liberal education liberal? And it's an actual question that I'm concerned with. And it's connected to two things that happened recently that prompted this. Some of you might be aware of it. How many people were at convocation? Okay, well, no first-year students here, but Professor Elaine Young asked a very interesting question, or made an interesting statement. She said, this is your education, and that should inspire you. And it was inspiring, but I thought to myself, is it your education? Is it really your education? And if it isn't, why isn't it? Okay? And then the second thing that prompted it, for those of us in the CCM division, we've been having discussions around internships, and there was a conversation about offering a semester, an internship that would qualify for an entire semester. So instead of doing like a 3-credit or 6-credit internship, the internship would count for 15 credits. Some schools do this, and there was a lot of support among some faculty. The idea actually horrified me. And I thought to myself, why does that horrify me? And it was pointed out by some faculty, you know, it's a great experience for students. They will be able to work in the industry and put into play your critical thinking skills and your creative problem skills. And I thought to myself, there's a difference between creative problem solving and critical theoretical thinking. And I want to explain what I mean by that because that's what's important. So please follow me on this, okay? I don't think it's enough to be encouraged to think outside the box. You have to think about the box, okay? You have to be looking at the box and think, who told me this was a box? And why is the box the way that the box is, okay? And do I need to change the box? That's what gives you the power to change your world. That's what allows you to have this be your education. So liberal, what does that mean? Liberal as in liberating, liberal as in free. Liberal arts traditionally were meant to be worthy of a free person, okay, in order to take part in civic life. So already we're thinking of you, the student, as future citizen, not future taxpayer, okay? And that's a distinction. The AAC&U, the Association of American Colleges and Universities, states, liberal education is a philosophy of education that empowers individuals, liberates the mind from ignorance, and cultivates social responsibility. So I thought, all right, liberal, like we all kind of hear the word liberal, but where does it come from? Well, it comes from liber, meaning free, unrestricted, unimpeded, which can also mean unbridled, unchecked, and licentious. You ask conservatives what they think about liberals, that might be what they think. In the 1920s, the word liberal in political circles came to imply people who have vigorous convictions, tolerance for the opinions of others, and the persistent desire for progress. Now that sounds to me a hell of a lot like ethical reasoning, global and cultural sensitivity, and critical thinking skills. These are the underpinnings of the core curriculum here at Champlain, and they are the very thoughts, habits of mind that should be integrated into the professional program classes. Okay, but there is a tension here. Let's all be aware of that. Johan Neem of the AAC&U says, the purpose of liberal education, unlike vocational education, is not to train, but to change people. And he continues, it is a shame that we live in a moment in which the pursuit of knowledge for non-commercial purposes is deemed to be of little value. It reduces the purpose of knowledge to generating profit. And I know I'm not preaching to the converted in most of you. You came to Champlain College because you want a job, you want to make money. I get that, and I'm not saying you've come to the wrong place. I'm just saying there's more to your education if you want it to be yours. The tension exists in Champlain College's very mission statement, which says the college uniquely blends technology leadership, market-savvy innovation, and fiscal responsibility with a commitment to liberal learning, community involvement, and the human touch. Okay? These things have been somehow opposed. For those of you who have read the New York Times series on education recently, Pia talks about utility U versus utopia U. It's the same thing. And so I went to Jürgen Habermas. Doesn't mean much to most of you, but I always talk about Jürgen Habermas when I do a blue stool. Habermas is a German critical theorist who talks about two things in the world: the system and the life world. Okay? The system is a self-perpetuating thing. It is the market. It is the bureaucracy. It has only two values: money and power. Okay? It does not care about people. People who enter the system need to speak the language of money and power. And that is different than what is called the life world. The life world is the place where people come to shared understandings and create relationships. Okay? And Habermas says that a problem in the modern world is there's an uncoupling of the system and the life world. Arthur Fink of the University of Calgary goes even further. It says, not only is it an uncoupling, but the system is colonizing the life world. Okay? And that is happening even at the university level, maybe especially. The question, how much money will you make as a college graduate? And is it worth what you're putting out there? Okay? Money and power are quantitative, but you cannot quantify things like justice. You cannot quantify human decency. And hopefully a college education will help you better appreciate the nature of those abstractions. Okay? Systems are fully rationalized. And we are not just preparing you to enter the system, which is about efficiency, calculability, predictability, and control. Systems reduce the person to a part of the machinery to do what the system does. And you, my students, are not merely fodder for the machine. Now, I'm aware of my own privilege. I come from an upper middle class background. It was not my fear that I would be starving in the streets. Okay? I went to Harvard, and the very first week of class at Harvard, all us freshmen were brought into a room and told by the dean of faculty or the dean of the college the following: this is true. Welcome. You are here at Harvard to become educated men and women. This is not a vocational school. Okay? Now that's a privileged perspective. That's perhaps an elitist perspective, but it allowed for me to truly get a liberal education and to think about what I think is important. Still, I am aware of the fact that Harvard, at least back in the 1980s, totally divided themselves from what's a useful tension, that liberal learning has something to do with your professional training, okay? There was a disconnect from the practical world, hence accusations of the ivory tower, okay? But there is a connection. There is a necessary connection. And that's what I want you to get to understand why this is your education. A liberal education, this is Neem again, offers people the tools they need to make sense of a complicated world. Because doing so is of immeasurable value to the individual and to society. Ideally, a liberal education will instill in you students the disposition to ask questions you did not know were worth asking. And so I beg you, I really, really do, to ask questions not just in some academic vacuum, why is the sky blue? Although that might be an applied question for environmental policy majors. But to ask applied questions about your world. For instance, game majors. Anyone in one of the game majors here? Fine, here we go. Here's a question. Why aren't there more women in the game industry? And does this impact the images of women that are presented in games? And does this then feed itself to further marginalize women from the industry, thus perpetuating the fact that fewer industry hire women in the game industry? You understand where I'm going with that? Anyone from the business school here? Anyone from Stiller? Here's a question. Why are there only 5 African-American CEOs for the America's 500 largest companies? Hey, that's 1%. But the percentage of population for African Americans in this country is closer to 15%. And might that question somehow be connected in any way to the aggressive policing of our African American men in this country? And if so, is there anything you can do about it? Anyone from education? Okay, well, you're probably doing other things, but here's the question. For those of us who are educators, and that's many of us here, why are teachers' unions so vilified in the United States these days? And who actually wins when teachers have less collective say about what goes on in the school? Is it really the students? These are the kind of questions I'm interested in asking. You need to integrate your liberal learning with your professional training. And at times, even, your liberal learning must trump your professional training. It must frame your professional training. Become aware of the box. Question the box. Free your mind from the box. And that will make this education truly yours. Thank you.